Wow, let's begin. It's a great dull moment, no, for all of us. So good evening, everyone. My name is Paola Gaeta, and I have the pleasure to be the director of the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights for a few months, and then I will stop. But this is not the first graduation ceremony I've had the pleasure to participate in from the Geneva Academy, and it's a joy to see the continuation of what started in 2007, also today, together with you. So good evening, everyone, dear graduates, dear families, dear friends and colleagues. A very welcome to the 2025 graduation ceremony of this Geneva Academy. It's really a great pleasure and an honor for me to guide you throughout the ceremony this evening. And this is an evening, of course, of celebration, of pride and gratitude. Tonight, of course, we celebrate your journey, your commitment to learning, to justice and to humanity. And now I have the pleasure to open our ceremony and to invite our head of education, Dr. Clotilde Prégorière, to deliver her welcome address. Please, Clotilde, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paola. Dear board members, dear member of the Fondation Prix Henri Dunant, dear faculty members, dear teaching assistants, dear colleagues, dear students and participants, family and friends. What a year it has been. I can still picture the first day in September welcoming you all, full of anticipation and excitement. It feels only like yesterday, yet here we are celebrating your graduation. For some of you, it's been a demanding, transformative year. For others, 2 years of dedication and growth. And tonight, the moment you worked so hard for, stepping onto the stage, has finally arrived. I know how much effort this journey has required. You face long days, tough readings, and countless discussions. We challenge you to think critically, and you challenge us just as much. Together we learned, we adapted, and discovered new ways of understanding the complex realities of humanitarian law, transitional justice, and human rights. So I want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication, for your thoughtful participation, and yes, even for those moments where your lively debates made the class run a little bit long. You made this year vibrant, meaningful, and full of life. Tonight, it's not only about celebrating your academic success, it's also about welcoming you into our growing family of alumni. Yes, you are joining a global community of professionals who continue to uphold the values of the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights in every corner of the world. We are proud to almost count you among them. Of course, none of this would have been possible without our exceptional faculty members. They have tested you, pushed you, and inspired you, but always with kindness and dedication. I can still hear Professor Gaggioli jokingly worrying that no one will show up at 8 o'clock for a class, but yeah, you were there. Or Professor Di Stefano transitioning from hands-out to PowerPoint and then back to hands-out again. So it's always an ongoing reminder that good teaching is always about constant learning. Our gratitude also extends to the teaching assistants who were by your side through every assignment, question, and exam. Their professionalism and care were vital to your success. And behind the scenes, many others made your experience possible. To the student office, I don't know who they are, Anna, Alina, and Lotte, thank you for your tireless efforts in finding rooms or adapting the schedule, for always going the extra mile to support our students and participants swiftly and with a smile. To Greg, for invaluable advice and management of internship and professionalized activity. For Tim, for capturing your year through photos and stories. To Romain, for making sure that all our events, including tonight, run smoothly, and also Romain for being our unofficial IT expert. And to our director, of course, thank you for your leadership and constant support. Dear soon-to-be graduates, I hope your time at the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights has left a lasting mark on you, as it has on us. I hope you will remember not only what you studied, but also the friendship you built, the moment you laugh together, and the conversation that inspired you to see the world differently. As you move forward, I encourage you to use what you have learned here, your knowledge, your skills, your values, to continue strengthening human rights protection, combating impunity, and helping societies heal from conflict and injustice. The challenges are immense, but so is your potential. You are ready. So congratulations to each and every one of you. May your next chapter be filled with purpose, courage, and adventure.
Thank you, dear Clotilde, for your words, for your dedication to our program and to our students. Now I have the honor and the pleasure to invite to the stage Professor Christian Beauvais, who is the president of the board of the Geneva Academy, to deliver his welcome address. Thank you, Christian.
Dear families, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, and dear students. In fact, what I should have said is only dear students, because we are all students during all our life. And in spite of my very great age, I can tell you I'm still a student. So I do believe that we are all students. But tonight, I just would like to address a few words, to the students who just graduated. And I would like to tell you, to those very peculiar students, that in fact you are 3 times lucky. 3 times lucky, first lucky because in fact, you were selected among several other candidates to be students at the Academy. And that's a great honor. It's also a burden sometimes. I'm sure that you maybe felt it more like a burden from time to time, but I hope also that you appreciated, the time that you spent here. Second time lucky also because you had wonderful professors and support staff, and Clotilde just mentioned it before. They organized for you probably the best classes, the best seminars, the best also workshops that you can have in the international humanitarian law and human rights. And for this, you should also be very grateful, to all these persons. And third time lucky, if you allow me, probably because you have chosen, international humanitarian law and human rights rather than to be traders. Because, I used to teach banking law. And frankly, it's much better when you are participating in a dinner to be teaching or to be a student in humanitarian law or human rights than to be a banker, especially these days, in spite of the fact that, humanitarian law has very strong roots in banking, but people have the tendency to forget it a bit more quickly. It's really quite challenging also, these times, to be dealing with these 2 fields. But I bet, very frankly, that because you chose this, you also chose some matters that are moving, that are evolving, and evolving to become stronger. And that's really what I'm ready today to bet about. Not to be weaker, as some people would tell you today, but really international law in general, I'm sure will be back, and we will be back much stronger in a couple of years. So we are facing these various challenges today, and I'm happy, that we were able, to give you some education in these fields. On the other hand, I said that you were 3 times lucky. On the other hand, the fact that you are present tonight in this graduation ceremony doesn't owe anything to luck. As we were saying before, it owes it only to your efforts, to your work, and of course, the support you received. The The support, I mean, it's not only coming from the staff I mentioned before, but also, I mean, there are various foundations that are helping you, giving scholarships, giving prizes also. And I would like also, I mean, to express here the gratitude of the Academy to all these various consistencies that have really helped us from the time we created the Academy. Of course, I mean, we should all be grateful also to your families and friends, I mean, for the support you got. And I would like to say, I mean, really, I mean, congratulations also to the families. I mean, it's not, we are very happy to see, I mean, several families here tonight, and sometimes, I mean, coming from rather far. We know how much time you invested to get these diplomas. We know also how much time, I mean, your parents invested, I mean, to get you there. But yes, you did it, and in the name of the board, in the name of our director, of the professors and the staff of the Academy, I would like to address you our warmest congratulations. You did it, and you will hear it several times tonight. Congratulations about your efforts, but it's only because you deserve it. It's not because, I mean, people have no imagination, but it's only because, I mean, it's really your work that led you here tonight, and again, you fully deserved all these congratulations. Congratulations again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, dear Christian, for your words, for your congratulations, and for the continuous support you have given personally to the Geneva Academy when you were the Dean of the Faculty of Law, when the Academy was created, and for doing this now again as President of the Geneva Academy Board. Now, we will turn now to our students before the graduation and before the keynote speaker commences. We turn to our students because our students have realized a short movie of a few minutes. This is the students from the Master's Advanced Studies in Transitional Justice and the Rule of Law in relation to their study trip to Kosovo. So I would like to call to the stage Lily Radvan and Jesus Maya Pedraza to present their film, Kosovo Memory, that you created with your classmates. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paola, for such nice words. Thank you, Clotilde, to Alina, and to everyone at the Geneva Academy. This is truly a pleasure to present to you what we wanted to show you of our experiences we have, and, of course, a little bit of what we did. Because when we went to Kosovo for our short trip, we wanted not just to experience it, but also a group of students wanted to create something to show you what transitional justice is about and all the things we do regarding human rights. As some of you may know, during the 1998 and 1999, Kosovo was engaged in a war against Serbia and other specific states. And what happened is that there were a lot of people who were involved, a lot of civilians and victims who tragically passed away or are still missing. In this context, and as transitional justice is, there are four main pillars, but one of them, an ongoing one, which is the fifth one, memory, is also important. We wanted to highlight what memory means to all the people, all the organizations, and in general, what we can do together.
The goal of this movie came after we went to Kosovo, and we saw that there was a lot of work being done on memory, by civil society organizations. And we really reflected a lot about what that means and what it means to actually remember an instance of mass violence. And we wanted to make a little film to do justice to this from a student perspective, from a human perspective. And we ended up with what you saw, which is a small thing. But most importantly, we wanted this film to also be just like a little wink at all of the other instances of memory of these mass violence that are happening around the world, including what's happening currently in Palestine, in Congo, in Sudan, in Haiti, for example, or in Colombia, among like a lot of other instances of mass violence that are happening. So I guess the message of this film is that memory is not just what we see, but it's also an active effort not to forget. So enjoy.
Serbia fought a war with Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, eventually Kosovo.
Transitional justice refers to the mechanisms used by societies to address legacies of conflict and repression. Its central aim is to deliver accountability, recognize victims, and lay the foundations for sustainable peace. Transitional justice is understood under 4 pillars: truth, justice, reparation, and guarantees of non-recurrence. But increasingly, a 5th pillar has emerged: memory.
These were overseen parts of the society. What we saw after the war was these heroes. If you walk by in our town, you see people with Kalashnikovs, fighters, weapon, men over serious-looking fighting men. And that was not the reality. The men that I met during the war were with a lousy weapon, very desperate, not heavy militarized guerrilla fighters who had to fight a very strong army, such as Serbian army. So I'm going back to what I saw.
Unfortunately, there are 1,133 children who were killed or went missing during the war in Kosovo. As our policy is not to divide the victims by their ethnic background, so we have here written the names of all killed and missing children, including non-Albanians like Serbs, Roma, and others.
There is also a lack of inclusion of minorities and people, victims who come from marginalized communities, for example, Roma, Ashkali, Egyptian, Serbian community. These experiences are left in the margins, and also I want to emphasize the unique experiences of women and girls remain also in the margins because their contribution is left unmentioned and unaddressed, and also the way they experienced wars.
Well, when we talk about gender-based violence, it's not the same for a woman who doesn't have any disability. And then if we're talking about a woman who has some kind of disability, it's extra hard. And it's not so good if that person manages to go to one of the institutions to seek for help.
If you would have left it to a national narrative, it would single out people who are not majority. It would not be focused on women, for sure. It would not talk about non-Albanian victims. And this is why sometimes it takes a non-state actor, non-institutional actor, to tell the story.
we sent a photo. The children are all alive. I don't know if you notice me. Okay, it's this little guy here. And this is my brother. And they are all my relatives. Everyone is alive. What is the common thing of all of these children? All their fathers were missing. They were stopped. And at the time of the photo, they were still missing persons. And their bodies have been found in 2001, 2002 in Batajnica. Batajnica is a massive grave in 16 kilometers from Belgrade. So 16 kilometers from Belgrade, capital city of Serbia. So they have been killed in a city bordering with Albania and transported like 100 kilometers to Batajnica. Who is still missing? Still missing is the guy, the brother of this guy. His name is Arpnor. So the body of his brothers, the remains of his brothers are still unknown. Any other details? No? Any question?
Thank you so much, Lily and Jesus and your colleagues in making this moving and thoughtful project. It's very touching. Thank you so much. And I would like to follow the custom of the previous graduation ceremony to invite you to observe a minute of silence for all the victims of warfare. Now, not only we have to remember the victims of warfare, the victims of human rights violations around the world, but we have to remember everyone, like all those who are in this room, like our graduates of tonight, the millions of men and women who dedicate their life to the protection of peace and to the ideal of a better world through their constant daily work. So for them, a big applause. And now it's time to give the floor to our keynote speaker of tonight, Mô Bleeker. Mrs. Mô Bleeker, it's a great pleasure for us to have you tonight, and thank you for accepting our invitation. Mô Bleeker is currently serving as Special Advisor on Responsibility to Protect to the UN Secretary General, but she has done an impressive work before that and has had a long-standing engagement for peace, justice, prevention of atrocities, and dealing with the past. Mô Bleeker has served indeed also as special envoy for dealing with the past and the prevention of atrocities at the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. I met her at that occasion, I remember, many years ago. And in that role, she was instrumental in developing a Switzerland policy on transitional justice and in supporting peace processes in countries such as Colombia, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. She has dedicated her entire life and career to ensuring that accountability, memory on transitional justice, memory and reconciliations are part of our society's rebuild after violent past. And therefore, we're very truly honored to have you tonight with us, Mo, and you have the floor. Thank you. Your commencement speech is entitled 2005-2025, the commitment of the responsibility to protect aspirations, realities, and opportunities. Thank you so much, Mo. You have the floor.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you very much. It's a big emotion to be here. I have been studying here. So I was you some decades ago, very precisely here. So it's very special to be here. And thank you for the documentary we just saw. Very touching, and I knew mostly everyone who was speaking there. And so it's wonderful, it's very meaningful. So I'm very happy to be here in this place where I studied several decades ago. And I'm just simply very honored to speak out at this graduation ceremony. You just have reached a very important milestone, and I'm sure that you are very eager to really celebrate this event, but you will have to wait a little longer and listen to me a little longer before you can go really and dance and sing. So don't worry, I won't take too long, but I want to share some thoughts with you as you will leave this university and go in the big world. I have been encouraged to share a few thoughts on the principle of the responsibility to protect, a principle that will celebrate this year, the 20th anniversary. So commemorations are moments of celebration and joy, as you know, but also moments of critical reflection on what needs to be improved, changed, radically changed sometimes, and on challenges and opportunities. That is what I wish to share with you, and I invite you, therefore, to return with me to the very origin of the responsibility to protect. And you will see how often we have to go back to the roots, what was meant when this or that was created. So in 2000, 5 years after the genocide in Rwanda, 4 years after the genocide in Srebrenica, the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan posed the urgent question to the United Nations General Assembly. How should we, said he, respond to Rwanda, to Srebrenica, to flagrant and systematic violations of human rights that affect all the principles of our common humanity, if humanitarian intervention is in fact, that was the word used at this time, is in fact considered as an unacceptable infringement of sovereignty? The central question posed by Kofi Annan in 2005 remains highly relevant today, as you know. Do states have the right to take coercive measures, including military measures, against another state to protect populations under stress, under threat, in that state, and if so, under what circumstances? It is in response to this question that the International Commission on Intervention and State Sovereignty was created. And in 2001 already, this commission published a report of over 100 pages. I recommend its lecture, it's really very interesting. It had a preliminary response, namely that state sovereignty comes with responsibility. And this is still valid. that the primary responsibility to protect the population lies with the state itself, but that when the state in question is unwilling or unable to end or prevent this violation and this crime, the principle of non-interference gives way to the international responsibility to protect. That the fundamental principle of the responsibility to protect are found in the obligation inherent in the very concept of state sovereignty, and also in the responsibility of the Security Council under Article 24 of the United Nations Charter to maintain international peace and security, and in the specific legal obligations arising from declarations, conventions, treaties relating to human rights and the protection of persons, international humanitarian law, national law, and also in the evolving practice of states, regional organization, and the Security Council itself. And furthermore, the report states that this responsibility to protect encompasses three specific responsibilities: the responsibility to prevent, the responsibility to respond, protect, the responsibility to rebuild. And the report emphasizes, we recognize that we live in an interdependent and globalized world, and that many of today's threats do not recognize national boundaries, are interrelated and must be addressed at the global, regional, and national levels in accordance with the Charter and international law. And 4 years later, in 2005, the World Summit Outcome document was unanimously approved by the United Nations General Assembly, including 2 paragraphs. So a book of 100 pages, 2 paragraphs. Paragraph 138, paragraph 139, affirming that every state has a responsibility to protect its population from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity, that the United Nations should establish an early warning system, and that the international community, through the United Nations, has the responsibility to use diplomatic, humanitarian, and other appropriate peaceful means in accordance with Chapter 6 and 8 of the Charter to help protect populations from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity, and to take collective action in a timely and decisive manner through the Security Council in accordance with the Charter, and if necessary, when peaceful means are proving inadequate and national authorities are manifestly failing in their duty to protect their population from these crimes against genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. Beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful. And then what? One important point is sovereignty is a responsibility. It's not only a right, and it is a shared responsibility. So, what has happened since 2005? And where do we stand today? And the response, as you know, is very sobering. The world is experiencing the highest numbers of conflicts since the end of the Second World War. And today's major armed conflicts are characterized by widespread, explicit, willful disregard for the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. Attacks on humanitarian aid and humanitarian workers are on the rise, as well as targeted attacks on groups because of their national, ethnic, religious, sexual, gender, or political identity. Early warnings about violations and the risk of atrocity crimes have generally not led to timely preventive and protective measures, and furthermore, the Security Council, as you know, has been too frequently paralyzed by the use of the veto, in particular in contexts where atrocity crimes are proved and are seen to be committed. In addition, a growing number of member states support and supply arms and financial support to parties involved in atrocity crimes. Some member states also seek to undermine the whole United Nations architecture and principles, including institutions responsible for educating responsibility. Now, we all know that atrocity crimes also occur in contexts that are not at war. On a little note, Switzerland has recognized the Commission of Crimes Against Humanity against one minority in this country, and this is the Yenish Sinti minority. Follow this story, I think it's also important. So, no society is immune. So, denial of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, attack on freedom of expression, journalists and media, on the right to peaceful assembly and democratic processes, hate speech, the promotion of racism, ideologies of exclusion and dehumanization, incitement to violence and exclusionary policies against identity groups, minorities, or any specific groups, whether on the basis of gender or any other criterion. All these are among the very serious warning signs which, if ignored, can create fertile ground for the commission of atrocity crimes. Not today, but maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow. The fact is that warning signs and dynamics that could lead to the commission of atrocity crimes are multiplying all around the world today, and I wish to insist, no society is immune from atrocity crimes. So, 20 years later, this reality is indeed sobering. But by the way, who said that it would be easy? Does this mean that all our efforts have been useless? Not at all. It means that we have to work, and to work again. It means that we have to understand the nature of the difficulties and to address them. On the other hand, let us also be aware that good news generally do not make the first page. So allow me to dedicate the last minute to good news and share some few thoughts with you, a symbolic way on my part to pass you the torch, to you, freshly graduated students, my colleagues. You have a long academic life ahead of you, which I hope will be accompanied by a concrete commitment with and in the field. Perhaps the first point I wish to underline is that it is possible to work on very difficult and complex issues such as sovereignty, to propose principles for action, to reach consensus on new principles, and to do so within a few years, as I just told, thanks to an extremely proactive, diplomatic and scientific engagement and towards the obtainment of consensus. The second is that progress cannot be achieved alone. Victories in these fields can only be collective. Progress can be made through multidisciplinary efforts, with people agreeing to develop a joint critical thinking, inclusive of diversity of opinion, origins, and actors, local and national communities, civil society, experts, academics, diplomat, artists, including figures of high ethical standing. Let's always keep this combination in mind. That's the winning combination. The third point is to remember that a resolution written on paper, even when supported by a unanimous decision, does not necessarily lead to its implementation. The implementation of a resolution, of a new principle, is the result of another kind of very long-term effort. A minister once told me, the international community accuses us of not wanting to fight impunity, not wanting to make a transitional justice process. But he said, in all confidence and just between us, we simply do not know how to implement a transitional justice process. And I said, well, Minister, if that is all it takes, we really can help you. Well, he replied, we had just 2 minutes. If you can help us understand, and if we can take ownership of this process and realize it with meaningful results for the victims, we will also be able to marginalize the 10% of us in our government who opposes radically the fight against impunity. So what was this conversation with this minister about? It was about the importance to transpose emerging and universal standards into a particular context, into history, into culture. It was about acknowledging existing local and national skills, values and practices. It was about appropriation. It was about local leadership. Maybe simply, it was also about what it means to be able and to become willing. And here comes my fourth point. A norm cannot be imposed from outside. It must be appropriated, become owned, to be applied in such a way that it produces meaning. I'm an anthropologist, I'm not a legal one, so the production of meaning is very important in my profession. So it should produce meaning, create significance, becomes an accepted norm, integrated by the society at large, about which citizen and state can then and shall debate, discuss, fight, but in a non-violent way. But the conversation was maybe also about political will. How can political will be generated? I think no one really knows. But this courageous minister, who was later forced into exile, was convinced that ownership and working together as a society on these precise societal weaknesses was part of the solution. On a very similar note, in 2006, the International Conference of the Great Lake region adopted and approved the Protocol for Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes of Genocide, War Crimes, and Crimes Against Humanity, and all forms of discrimination. Following this, national prevention committees were set up. And as for today, a good dozen of them still exist and are working on the ground. They are composed by representatives of ministries responsible for justice, security, education, minorities, health, religions, depending on the context. Equipped with their own early warning system, they make recommendations for early prevention and early protection against atrocity crimes. They sometimes have to call on sub-regional or regional bodies in their own context, either to obtain support in the event of a worsening situation, or simply to put pressure on their own parliament or government. And I can attest that very concrete and tangible results have been achieved and have contributed to prevent and to halt dynamics that could have led to the commission of atrocity crime. So my fifth point is that if and when society decides to embrace their weaknesses and to address them as a collective democratic endeavor of prevention, transformation and progress becomes possible. Prevention and protection become possible. And my other story, my end story, is more recent. Over the past 2 years, during which we have witnessed in real time not only the preparation, but also the execution of war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide in the occupied Palestinian territories, a very significant number of member states have worked tirelessly to reach a consensus to stop this deadly and unbearable machinery. Resolutions, meetings, diplomatic pressure, complaints to the International Court of Justice, alliance with civil society, sanctions against Israel, denunciation of contract with the arms industry, cutting relations, support for nonviolent civil initiatives such as the flotilla. And this is very important, and for several reasons. One is, although it's not a very vocal majority, it is nevertheless a majority of member states. Don't forget that. Second, because these initiatives taken by civil society, member states and collectivities are all clearly inspired or in line with not only the vision of responsibility to protect, but also with all the existing conventions, agreements, resolutions that constitute our common home, that of human rights, international humanitarian law, peace and security. So it was worth developing them, and it's worth continuing working for them. And now, and this is my last point, remember that the responsibility to protect is also the responsibility to prevent. That was even the first point. But still caught in controversies about sovereignty in New York, in Geneva, and other very important headquarters, member states have certainly neglected two important elements: prevention and national ownership. To overcome these two gaps, we need to make an immense effort to produce a conceptual approach of early prevention of atrocity crime and early protection of communities and groups at risk. States need to be equipped in permanence with prevention tools, capacity, and mandated to deploy these efforts in cooperation with scientists, academics, and civil society, bottom-up and horizontally. Prevention in the context of atrocity crime is both a technical issue and a cultural issue in the sense of social practice. Prevention as a culture is the common understanding and appropriation of a common good on which we have to negotiate and agree again and again and again, because precisely this is the subject of conflict of interest at the very heart of each society. This is, dear former student, dear colleagues, future colleagues, where sovereignty can become indeed responsibility. This is where the responsibility to prevent, to protect, to rebuild on a global scale, and in this globalized world, can, could, should become a reality for which it is worth engaging all our efforts, all your efforts tomorrow, now more than ever. And I hope to meet you there. So I thank you for your attention, and I congratulate each and all of you for this graduation. Thank you very much. Ça va? You have to part with it. Thank you. Thank you.
Dear Mo, you were counting on some chocolate?
Yes.
As a gift for your presence tonight, or perhaps a bottle of wine? No. We have taken a terrarium for you, a small terrarium. It's a microcosm of a little plant that can live in peace without human interference. And I very much hope that this will be what we will in the future accomplish, a world in peace without human interference. Thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
There is the bag there. When I explain to you what to do.
This is you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear Mo, for your beautiful, inspiring presentation, I would say, on responsibility to protect, which is also a responsibility to prevent, and for giving also some tips for the way forward, not only to claim that the world does not go as we wish, but also what is the concrete action that have to be taken. Now we have another important moment of this graduation ceremony. It existed since the beginning of the QD, I think, and after the Geneva Academy. It is the moment where we invite the Fondation of the Prix Henri Dunant to award the prize to the winner of 2025, to the best paper worth of this prize. And before inviting to the floor my dear colleague Etienne Kuster on behalf of the Fondation du Prix Henri Dunant, I would like also to tell you that you don't get a terrarium, you don't get a bottle of wine, you don't get chocolate, but we wanted to stress how much we appreciate your contribution towards so many years by making, on behalf of your foundation, a little donation to a foundation, another foundation, the Fondation aux Arts, which is a foundation which helps refugees and has been also certified by Swiss, as a Swiss Charities certification. And therefore, on your behalf, we thought that is what perhaps Henri Dunant would have wished as a sign of appreciation. So it's my pleasure, Etienne, to invite you to the floor for the little part concerning the ceremony of the Prix Henri Dunant. Thank you.
So, dear graduates, dear professors, dear colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm also a graduate from this institution a few decades ago, so I also relate dearly to that. And it is today my pleasure to speak on behalf of the Henri Dunant Prize Foundation, in which I sit for the ICRC. Before addressing the laureates of this year's prize, I would like to present the foundation. And first the prize. So the Prix Henri Dunant is intended to reward individuals or organizations having made a significant contribution to the study, spread, and renewal of the ideas and achievements of Henri Dunant. The Foundation's aim in awarding the prize is to highlight the role of those who engage themselves spiritually to militate for the dignity of the human person by their research, their ideas, their communication skills. Its purpose is to reward persons who do work in a remarkable way to deepen, spread, and renew the ideas and commitment of Henri Dunant. The Foundation awards the prize in two forms: the Henri Dunant Prize, which will be revealed in a few minutes today, so research, and the Henri Dunant Prize Field that we will also have a ceremony about later on this year on the 20th of November. The Henri Dunant Prize Field was awarded for the first time in 1995. The board of the Foundation awards the Field Prize on the basis of candidacies proposed by its members. Its wish is to reward persons rather than institutions or organizations. It favors persons who have become engaged, having personally witnessed or been victims of human suffering, rather than humanitarian career professionals. It gives finally priority to persons working directly in countries or regions concerned by armed conflicts or other situations of human suffering. As regards the Henri Dunant Prize Research that we are awarding tonight, it was awarded for the first time in 2005 and is thus the fruit of a partnership with the Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights in Geneva. Awarded annually within the framework of the program of education of the Academy, its purpose is to reward an exceptional academic work which contributes to deepen, spread, and renew the ideals of Henri Dunant through law. Now, I would like also to share some criteria of attribution of the Henri Dunant Prize. Under its two forms, we award the prize to persons pursuing the ideals of Henri Dunant, and here I can name a few themes and fights that Henri Dunant pursued during his life. First, the care he had for victims of persecutions, religious persecutions, but also sociocultural persecutions. Second, also, of course, the dedication of Henri Dunant to the cause of victims of war and militarism. And of course, you can see that exemplified in the very first 1864 Geneva Convention. There were also other causes that are maybe less known, as feminism and also the value of the role of women in humanitarian aid, but also pacifism, where Henri Dunant was also prone to denounce the disasters caused by war. The prize is also attributed to persons who pursue the struggles of Henri Dunant following the spirit he demonstrated in his era. And here we speak of humanity, so the fact that Henri Dunant demonstrated a strong compassion for those whom progress leaves behind, a basic aversion for the strong that exploit the weak, a hypersensibility in the face of any human suffering. Communication was also within the spirit of Henri Dunant, with an ability to request support from all sides, to mobilize, to remind the elites of their duty to educate public opinion, and to address humanity as a whole. And last, limitless commitment of Henri Dunant through the form of a refusal to accept the established order when it shocks, a conviction that an individual can change things, and a determination to proclaim convictions in spite of preconceived ideas. So with this in mind, I will now reveal the name of the laureate of the Henri Dunant Research Prize 2025 and read the laudatio for the selected work. Before that, I would like to warmly thank Professor Makossa Soli and Professor Cathy Clément, who are my fellow members within the Foundation Board, who contributed to assess this work and write this laudatio. So it is an honor to celebrate Mr. Lizang Niati, recipient of the 2025 So Mr. Lisang Niati is the recipient of the 2025 Henry Dunant Research Prize for his dissertation, and I quote, "When bullets threaten the pursuit of knowledge, reclaiming children's right to education in armed conflict through a human dignity-centered approach under IHRL and IHL," end of quote. So Mr. Niati's thesis was supervised by Professor Clara Sandoval at the Geneva Academy. And so this outstanding work embodies the very ideals that inspired Henry Dunant: humanity, courage, and faith in law as a force for compassion. It was found by my fellow member of the Henry Dunant Foundation Board. So, as I said, the Henry Dunant Research Prize rewards academic work that deepens and renew Dunant's ideals. Mr. Niati's study does precisely that. By focusing on the right of children to education in armed conflict, he joins Dunant's lifelong struggle to protect civilians and give voice to those silenced by violence. You may not know, but Dunant once dreamt of a green cross to protect women and children as the Red Cross protects the wounded on the battlefield. This dissertation gives that dream legal substance. For Mr. Niati, the destruction or occupation of schools is not a mere collateral tragedy, but a direct assault on human dignity. He argues that the denial of education must be seen not only as a legal violation, but as an encroachment on the child's intrinsic worth, the human dignity of the child, in his own words. Through this lens, he transforms education from an ancillary social right into a core humanitarian concern central to dignity and peace. The dissertation unites international humanitarian law and international human rights law within a coherent, dignity-centered framework. It demonstrates how dignity, long recognized in IHRL, can also guide the interpretation of IHL, enhancing protections for children and schools without inventing new norms. As noted in the thesis supervisor's evaluation, the work is, and I quote, "spotless in presentation, rigorously researched, and elegantly argued," end of quote. Beyond doctrinal precision, its originality lies in the operational dimension. Mr. Niati shows how a dignity-based approach can reshape practice. He proposes 3 complementary strategies: mainstreaming education as a humanitarian priority, ensuring safety in and around learning spaces, and treating education as reparation and recovery in post-conflict justice. Each reflects a rare capacity to bridge theory and action, law and humanity. In a world where wars in Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine, DRC, and many other contexts have left millions of children out of school, this study is of burning relevance. It documents with precision the scale of attacks on education, 6,000 incidents in 2 years alone. But its message transcends numbers. To deny education is to deny dignity and future. Like Dunant, Mr. Niati refuses resignation before suffering. He insists that humanitarian law, properly interpreted, must preserve not only life, but the possibility of a dignified life, even in war. His reasoning remains realistic. While advocating a total ban on the military use of schools, he does not claim an absolute prohibition of attacks if a schools become a lawful military objective. Rather, he argues that dignity must weigh decisively in proportionality assessments, an elegant synthesis of moral conviction and legal restraints. In conclusion, through meticulous research and profound humanism, Mr. Lisang Niati renews Henry Dunant's message for our time, that law must serve the human person, and that even amid conflict, the pursuit of knowledge must endure. His work reminds us that protecting a school means protecting the dignity, hope, and humanity of the child. Protecting education, he writes, is protecting humanity itself. In those words, the voice of Henry Dunant still resonates, urging us to believe that compassion, expressed through law, can change the world. For his intellectual excellence, moral clarity, and unwavering compassion, the Henry Dunant Foundation thus proudly confers upon Mr. Lisang Niati the 2025 Henry Dunant Research Prize with our warm congratulations. Would you like to tell him his chair? Yes. And to award this prize to the laureate, it is my pleasure and honor to call my fellow board member, Miss Cécile Dunant, arrière-petite-nièce d'Henri Dunant, to join me to award the certificate.
Invite you to say a few words, if you feel like. Thank you, Etienne, and thank you, Cécile. Thank you so much. A few words from the laureate.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful words. I cannot believe it. I'm super grateful. Thank you. And my speech begins. Members of the Henry Dunant Foundation, professors, fellow graduates, and our dear guest, a very good evening to you all. Education is one of the most enduring acts of faith. Faith that knowledge can heal, uplift, and transform. It is the light that guides us from ignorance to understanding, from despair to possibility. And it is in this spirit that I stand before you this evening, deeply honored and sincerely thankful to the Henry Dunant Foundation for this recognition. My deepest thanks also go to my wonderful supervisor, Professor Clara Sandoval, whose guidance and feedback on my research made this achievement possible. I am equally grateful to my family back home who are watching me online, and the Italian family that gave me a home during the writing of my paper, and everyone who has supported me. I also wish to thank the Geneva Academy and the sponsors who funded my studies. Without your support, I would not be here today. My paper examines the current protection of children's right to education in armed conflict under international humanitarian law and international human rights law. It argues that while international humanitarian law is traditionally regarded as the lex specialis in armed conflict, its protection is not always comprehensive, particularly regarding education. Indeed, despite the existing legal frameworks, schools are frequently attacked, educational infrastructure is destroyed, and millions of children globally are left without access to education because of ongoing armed conflict. As my paper argues, this underscores the imperative need to strengthen protection. Accordingly, drawing on the established link between the right to education and human dignity under international human rights law, the paper proposes a novel interpretive framework that reframes the denial of education during armed conflict, not only as a violation of international law, but also as a direct assault on the human dignity of the child. It argues that the connection between the right to education and human dignity is fundamental, that it is not only the foundation, but also what makes it transformative. If human dignity approach is used as part of legal protection, then many conducts happening today would not be permitted simply because the right to education is not only founded on human dignity, but also delivers a dignified life. Integrating this perspective would strengthen the normative coherence of IHL and offer stronger protection of children's right to education in armed conflict. Recognizing schools as vital spaces for learning, stability, and development, this approach emphasizes that access to education underpins the holistic
children's holistic development, the realization of their rights, and the safeguarding of their human dignity. The paper goes further to propose actionable strategies to operationalize this human dignity-centered framework in practice. It outlines 3 key strategies. Firstly, mainstreaming education as a central humanitarian and legal priority. And secondly, ensuring safe and demilitarized learning environments through measures like Safe Schools Declaration. And thirdly, supporting long-term educational recovery and reparation after conflict. Ultimately, my hope is that this research, which I'm continuing in my PhD studies, contributes in some way to a world where no child's education is silenced by the sound of war. For when we deny a child the right to learn, we deny their human dignity. And when their human dignity is lost, so too is our humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisang, for your words, and thank you for the Fondation Prix du Nom again, and congratulations. Now there is another special moment of this graduation ceremony, since we don't want only to have the Prix Henri Dunant. We established since a long time the best paper prize for each of the 3 programs that we host at the Academy. And I would like to invite the Head of Education, Dr. Clotilde Pégorière, to take care of this part of the ceremony. Thank you, Clotilde.
Thank you, Paola. So, as Paola mentioned, in addition to the Henri Dunant Prize, the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights awards prize for the best Master of Advanced Study paper in each of our programs. So we had this year a fantastic selection committee composed of, and in alphabetical order, Professor Andrea Bianchi, Professor Giovanni Di Stefano, Professor Paola Gaeta, Professor Clara Sandoval, Thomas Hunger, and myself. So I would like to thank all of them for having read 8 LLM Master of Advanced Study paper, 6 Master of Advanced Study paper in TJ, and 2 Executive Master of Advanced Study paper. So the members of the committee were all very impressed with the quality of all the paper, and it was a very difficult task to choose a winner per program. So we want to really congratulate all of the nominees. But now, who are the winners? So our first awards for the best Executive Master of Advanced Study paper goes to Joshua Eckley for their work titled United Nations Resolution Establishing the Right of Access to Civilians in Conflict, Underlining or Undermining International Humanitarian Law. You got me worried there. I thought you were not here. But congratulations.
Give me 1 second here. Thank you. You'll have to forgive me 1 second. I had a problem with the... no. It's giving me a little bit of difficulty, but let's see. It's unfortunate. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, sorry.
But then you come up to your speech. So just stay here and then we do the It's a little teaser, he's coming back, he's coming back. So while Joshua is finding his speech, because we want to know about his paper, don't we? So I'm going to go to our second award, which is the Best LLM Master of Advanced Study paper, which is awarded to Shi Chen for the paper Invisible Plans, Visible Arms, the Potential of Common Plan Elements. I just want to finish reading the title for everyone. Invisible Plans, Visible Arms, the Potential of Common Plan Element in Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Cases at the International Criminal Court. So congratulations, Chi.
Thank you, Clotilde. Esteemed professors, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, not long ago, someone asked me what I will take away from the Academy. Since it was after me submitting the thesis and starting to dip my toes into the professional world, my response was probably a stress-induced cold and a lot of sleep, which, to be fair, was quite accurate. But after some sleep and distance, I realized what I'm actually carrying forward: a sharpened sense of purpose and a soft kind of hope. Over the past year, I spent solitary hours trying to untangle why so many legal efforts have failed to capture the full reality of sexual and gender-based violence. This thesis was an effort to give a voice to the victims and survivors. I was able to carry it through thanks to the constant encouragement from my loved ones and the thoughtful guidance of Professor Sarita Ashraf. If I stand here today with this award, it is not to say I found all the answers, but rather it's to say that these questions are worthy of asking, and that the Academy has given me, as well as everyone here, the courage to keep asking these questions. It is no secret that the humanitarian sector is in a deep and structural crisis. We, the dedicated young people seeking to make a humanitarian impact, are facing unparalleled obstacles and barriers to entry. This is indeed frustrating, but I refuse to cave in to that desperation, not only because we have been told it never was and never will be easy, but more importantly, we are not in this just for ourselves. Humanitarian work is never simply just a job. It's a dedication to make humanity prevail in all kinds of crises. The challenge may be greater than before, so we will have to be better than before and more determined than before. If I have seen anything throughout the last year, it is our unwavering strive to be just that. Against all odds, this gives me immense hope. A kind of hope that I would dare to call the audacity of optimism. And for that, I thank you, all of you. Thank you.
And now we're going to listen to Joshua because he deserves also the floor.
Thank you. That was my stall tactic. But, it's truly an honor to receive recognition from such a distinguished legal experts. And I thank the committee for selecting my thesis as recipient for the Best XMAS paper. Moreover, I'm incredibly appreciative to have been part of this executive master program and privileged to celebrate this graduation all my fellow students here in Geneva, as well as online. For me, it is additionally special returning to the city now, nearly after a decade of first arriving to Geneva in preparation for my initial assignment with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, or MSF. It's a medical organization that not only provides healthcare to populations in distress, but also bears witness to the impacts of armed conflict and testifies to the importance of the rule of law in such settings. I can speak to this from my time in the conflict situations of splintered warfare in Central African Republic, in Myanmar during the initial years of the military coup and takeover, the war-torn province of Ituri in Democratic Republic of Congo, and in Ethiopia, where I currently serve as head of mission, a country devastated by the Tigray War, and one that remains fragile not only in that region, but in others. That said, 10 years after, this is also a moment of reflection. The 3rd of this month of October also marked 10 years since the bombing of the MSF Trauma Hospital in Kunduz, Afghanistan. In this attack, which went on for several hours, many people lost their lives, including patients seeking access to health care and staff endeavoring to access those patients in an effort to provide them aid. To date, this is the deadliest attack that have ever been committed against one of our facilities. However, the bombardment motivated much advocacy, which led to the passing of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2286, which calls for warring parties to comply with IHL, while also condemning attacks against medical facilities, personnel in conflict settings. Moreover, the resolution demands that all parties to the conflict facilitate safe and unimpeded passage for medical personnel and humanitarian personnel, consistent with international humanitarian law. But while the United Nations, through the General Assembly and Security Council, has steadily passed such resolutions on access for the past decades, with resolutions often calling for the full, safe, and unhindered access to humanitarian personnel and delivery of humanitarian assistance, most often through modalities mentioned in landmark UNGA Resolution 46182, that includes temporary relief corridors, as well as days and zones of tranquility. These efforts for effectuating humanitarian access have not been without question, raising debate as whether these resolutions strengthen or weaken international humanitarian law. So for my research, I thought to examine humanitarian access to civilians in conflicts in the international legal framework it falls within, particularly IHL and UN Charter chapters pertaining to the resolution. And then it goes on to explore whether these resolutions indeed establish the right of such access through these modalities and whether they undermine or underline. Of course, this was done through the reviewing specifically the 3 operational mechanisms that have been called for in adopted resolutions of the UNGA and UNSC: humanitarian pauses, humanitarian corridors, and humanitarian zones. Of course, there's a couple key arguments that come out of this, which is those that would underline IHL, with the main argument presented that that there are inherent weaknesses to IHL, notably related to the arbitrary denial of humanitarian access. But then there are also, of course, those arguments for which IHL is undermined by these UN resolutions. They would say that they arguably distract from and distort the understanding of the obligations of belligerents under IHL. So these were some of the aspects of which I explored. And the key findings were that even though IHL provides for access to civilians in conflicts, the rules regulating such access can be limiting. This is particularly in the case of situations of arbitrary denial of access, as mentioned. Resolutions of the Security Council, however, can overcome these limitations, particularly in terms of Article 103 of the UN Charter and Article 25, which of course stipulates that the UN Charter takes precedent over any others. Overall, I can say that the humanitarian modalities explored in this paper do not affect IHL obligations, but rather are a way of operationalizing them. Moreover, UN resolutions calling for such modalities may also give effect to IHL. Aid provided by IHL, underlying the provision of Geneva law. Indeed, civilians caught up in the middle of the conflict have been benefited from aid provided by resolutions, demanding durable humanitarian solutions, cross-border relief operations, and protected zones. Of course, UN resolutions may also undermine IHL. There have been instances that such resolutions have exacerbated the risks to civilians by seemingly restricting time and location aid can be received during pauses of the fighting, creating a false sense of security during relief corridor operations, and instrumentalizing safe zones and certain populations. Resolutions that have specific language outlining exactly the modalities, its operation or its humanitarian objective, and how they will be implemented are more effective. The modalities are also more impactful when they're expression of international community political will to implement and enforce them, often through resolutions of the Security Council or General Assembly. However, in order to be truly effective, there must be agreements among the belligerents as envisioned by IHL. Security Council resolutions issuing protective force to secure humanitarian corridors and zones must have an express mandate to use force and include measures to ensure that aid can be intended location. More of the protective armed forces, adequately, of course. I understand that I'm coming up on time here. Just to say that I do hope that this, that my research can also further the conversation as far as like whether these modalities do impact, undermine or underline. And as I mentioned, it depends, but it's good that the conversation can continue. And before I go, apologize, I would like to thank my thesis supervisor, Professor Lindsay Cameron, for her great direction on the topic and course correction. And I would also like to thank my colleagues of the XMAS program. While I may not have been present during much of the live sessions, often getting caught up later, please know that I leaned on your experience and your wonderful knowledge. Thank you all.
And now, last but certainly not least, the best Master of Advanced Study in Transitional Justice paper is given to Fatouma Taba for the paper. And I will not read the title, I think it's too much applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It has been 27 years since AKSU, and yet we still find ourselves reminding the law to name sexual and gender-based violence for what it is. When the International Tribunal for Rwanda began its work in 1994, not a single charge of sexual and gender-based violence appeared in its first indictments. It was only through the courage of women who testified in the Akesi case that the court was forced to confront what it overlooked. That rape was not incidental, but instrumental to genocide. That judgment came in 1998. 27 years later, we're still having to insist that sexual and gender-based violence is not a side note to atrocity, but part of its architecture. The persistence of women having to prove again and again that their suffering matters is what drew me to this research. As a junior lawyer, when my senior assigned me to read through the files and draft the prosecution's written submission on the Gambia's NIA9 case, the first major prosecution after the fall of a dictator, I remember sitting at my desk, surrounded by pages of witness testimonies and statements that spoke of unspeakable cruelty. Yet what struck me most was not what was written, but what was missing. The charges listed torture, murder, and other human rights violations, but nowhere did they mention sexual violence. That silence stayed with me. It revealed how even in our pursuit of justice, gendered harms can be made invisible. The principle of fair labeling may sound technical, but it is in truth about justice that speaks truthfully. It insists that when courts name crimes, they must reflect the true nature and gravity of the harm. When a tribunal names rape as rape, it does more than classify the conduct. It restores dignity, tells the truth, and affirms that gendered violence is not incidental to repression, but central to how power controls and humiliates. Yet, international criminal justice has been slow to learn this lesson. Too often, sexual and gender-based violence remains treated as secondary, something to add on after we have dealt with the serious crimes. This hesitation is precisely what the Gambia must resist. The challenge for special tribunal is not to add gender to justice, but to redefine justice so it cannot exclude gendered harm. This means listening in the language of survivors, not only admitting their testimony, but allowing it to shape the legal outcomes and historical truth. Working on this paper taught me that legal classification is not just a technical act. It is an act of memory. It decides whose pain is recorded, whose story becomes law, and whose suffering remains invisible. The struggle for justice, at its core, is a struggle for accurate storytelling, one that respects survivors' voices, acknowledges structural violence, and challenges institutions to see beyond what is convenient to prosecute. And as we speak about justice, I cannot help but think of Palestinian women whose endurance and silent grief remind us that the global struggle for recognition is far from over. Justice anywhere must be wide enough to hold all those whose stories the world tries to forget. This year has been one of the most transformative years of my life. I owe endless gratitude to my supervisor, Sarita Ashraf, whose guidance sharpened my intellect, legal reasoning, and sense of responsibility. Thank you for constantly reminding me to ask the question, is this applicable in the Gambia's context? To my father, words will never be enough. Everything this award represents began with his faith in me. Thank you for your endless sacrifices. And most importantly, thank you for always believing in me. To my mother, thank you for the countless prayers. Ajarama. To the professors and staff of the Geneva Academy, thank you for creating a space where critical thinking and compassion can actually coexist. You remind us that transitional justice is not just a legal field, it is a moral practice. To the MTJ class of 2025, you are real MVPs. Thank you. Thank you for an unforgettable experience. Most importantly, to Mam Degen and Maimuna, this year couldn't have been complete without you. Thank you for constantly holding space for me, and thank you for community. To Geeta, for always holding my hands when I was too nervous to ask questions in class. To Auntie Bafu and Uncle Lamin and Mohammed, who is in the crowd, thank you. You made Geneva feel like home. Your warmth and care have been my anchor. To my family, both present and watching online, my friends, both here and watching online, thank you for everything. And to the Gambian Embassy in Geneva, the ambassador who is here present with us, thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to be here. You made Geneva feel like home. Thank you for constantly holding space for us Gambians in Geneva, for reminding us that even far from home, we are supported, seen, and carried. The ambassador would often say that the Gambia is not a footnote in the UN, and I think it's safe to say it definitely is not a footnote in the Geneva Academy as well. The award for me is not only a recognition of my work, but it is a reminder that academic inquiry can actually be an act of justice. I hope that in some way this research contributes to the growing call for accountability that is both legally sound and profoundly human. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Clotilde, and congratulations to all the awardees of these Best Paper prizes. Now we have a last moment for the students' representatives for each program to share with us their reflections on this journey and what comes next, perhaps. So I'm happy to call them to the stage. From the Executive Master, Maria Cielo Linares. For the LLM and International Humanitarian, I go one by one? I go one by one. I go one by one. So you have the floor, one by one.
Okay, so dear professors, teaching assistants, Geneva Academy leadership, families, and most important, my extraordinary colleagues. Today, we stand at the threshold of completing not just an academic program, but a transformative journey that has equipped us with more than knowledge. Each of us arrived at the program with different motivations. Some were inspired by the difficult work of ICRC, others by the calling to protect children in armed conflict, and a willing to work more deeply on human rights and AHL, and many by witnessing the erosion of international law's foundations. What united us was a shared belief that in a world increasingly skeptic of multilateral institutions, we must help protect the highest principle of humanity, protection, and dignity. We live through systemic moments in international law during our studies, and so many things happen during the 2 years of the program, not just the half marathon. Gaza, Ukraine, Armenia and Azerbaijan, Syria, Sudan, and countless other conflicts tested not just our academic understanding, but our moral resolve. We saw how every single international law rule we were studying was systematically violated. We even saw the declaration of a genocide in front of our own eyes. During that time, we sometimes feel hopeless. Me, personally, I even had the bad sense to question the actual value of use coherent norms during the PIL exam. Yeah. Thank God Professor Di Stefano realized it was just coming from my frustration. But these events didn't merely shape our classroom discussion. They remind us why our work matters. The program was an opportunity to study them through a legal sense and not just a political one. What the master taught us is that when a state flout IHL, when civilians become targets, when the very foundation of the rules-based order face assault, legal knowledge without action is privilege without purpose. The core value we take from this journey is that the essence of human beings is the principle of humanity, that if it's not move us to act, render our education hollow. Clotilda and Anna always guide us, and thank you for that. Professor Gaglioli taught us to unpack complex themes. Professor Kolb made us laugh while delivering passionate explanation of IHL. Professor Krageman interactive quizzes show us how IHL and human rights intervene. And Professor Cameron put us on the spot with her critical questions. Professor Chavas and Gazzini inspire us with the realistic takes on current global issues. Professor Di Stefano and De Froiville gave us the foundations. And Professor Ni Olian classes were eye-opening. Guest professors such as Mansour Adaifi and Kate Gibson were inspirational. And every professor and assistant professor left their mark. But most important, they show us that rigorous legal analysis and deep humanity are not contradictory, they're complementary. The diversity of our cohort was our greatest asset. We learned from colleagues working with armed groups in the field, from those drafting a statement for permanent missions, from humanitarians, diplomats, and human rights advocates. Our WhatsApp group became a space of mutual support, shared resources, and yes, even laughter over automatic transcription that turned our dear This is Lava into This is Lava. This community proved that collaboration, not competition, advanced our common cause. In the name of our cohort, I would like to thank individuals such as Lynn and Ivanga, to name a few, for their provocative questions that added a different perspective to things. We balance full-time jobs, new babies, field deployment with poor internet, and countless other challenges while pursuing this degree. Your dedication inspires me daily. Together, we discover that PIL's seemingly overwhelming complexity eventually connects into a coherent framework that makes sense of our chaotic world. Together, we realize that most challenging subjects become most meaningful when we see their direct application to our professional mission. But graduation is not an ending, it's a commission. The legal tools we have mastered exist. The mechanisms for accountability are established. The principle of humanity, distinction, proportionality, and precaution are enshrined in law. Yet, we witness their systematic violation. The question is not whether international law is perfect. It will never be. The question is whether we will dedicate ourselves to make it effective. Let us be the lawyers who refuse to normalize IHL, a violation of IHL. Let us be the advocates who ensure victims' participation is not merely procedural but transformative. Let us be the diplomats who prioritize human rights over political expediency. Let us be the scholars who connect legal theory to lived experience of those who's more vulnerable. Let us be the practitioners who remember that behind every legal principle stands always a human life worth protecting. To the Geneva Academy, thank you for creating this intellectual sanctuary where rigorous legal education met practical knowledge. You have given us not just degrees. To my dear colleagues, this is not a goodbye, but until we meet again. We will continue working together in conference rooms where treaties are negotiated, in courtrooms where justice is sought, in the field office where IHL and human rights is implemented, and in countless spaces where international law's promise must be a reality. We are no longer students of international law. We are its guardians. Let us prove worth of that trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Cielo, also for the very good idea to become the guardians of international law wherever in the world. And now it's my pleasure to invite the LLM International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights representatives, Alice Di Gennaro and Yuri Berger.
Esteemed guests, dear professors, families and friends, thank you for being here today. Your presence truly makes this day all the more special. And to my fellow students present here today or watching us online, congratulations, we are Geneva Academy graduates. I don't know if I can say that yet, but I hope so. Indeed, if I had to describe this year in one word, it would be probably intense. But if I had to describe it in two, it would be beautifully intense. We came to the Geneva Academy with big ambitions to understand the law, to question the world, maybe even to change it. And somewhere between Common Article 3, endless treaty provisions, and the eternal debate on what the proportionality really means, we also found something else, a community. Between the pre-exam adrenaline, the spirited class debates, and the moments when the law finally made sense, we learned that our diversity was not a challenge, but a strength. Each of us brought a unique story, a personal way of seeing the world. And yet, despite these differences, we share that simple, powerful belief. Human dignity must be protected, and the law, imperfect as it may be, can still stand as a barrier against indifference. As student representatives, you and I had the privileged and sometimes a very difficult task of bringing together all our views and somehow speaking as one. It reminded us that unity doesn't mean sameness, but it means building bridges.
And building bridges and making connections was also a big part of our academic journey, where aside from our core subject, international humanitarian law, we were privileged to study adjacent topics to broaden our horizons. Our distinguished professors, each with an individual teaching style, reminded us that learning is not about memorizing, but about stepping out of your comfort zone, being wrong sometimes, and realizing that often growth starts exactly there. This provided us with a novel sensitivity and quite literally a new language. We have become true international lawyers on the way, and all of this in 1 year. The tutorials, thanks to our amazing teaching assistants, went a long way to support us in understanding the materials. We had the opportunity to debate some of the most profound questions of humanity that divided us across cultures. For instance, is it really a good idea to open a classroom window in freezing Geneva winter? To which one of our teaching assistants replied, it's okay as long as it's not next to me. But in contrast to this, we cared about each other's stories and struggles, supported each other, and cleared out any doubts we had. And if we had the chance, we tested our knowledge in quite competitive Kahoot quizzes. After countless fictional case studies where we saw utopia go to war with fantasia over issues with borduria, we were ready to translate these skills into real-world impact. And so we did through the many engaging readings, the IHL pleadings, where we simulated a real court proceeding bringing our arguments to life, as well as our practical internships, where we collected experience in places ranging from non-government organizations to diplomatic missions to international organizations in true Geneva fashion.
And outside the classroom, life in Geneva had its own traditions. There was the marmite, which required not just enthusiasm, but also a certain amount of upper body strength. And yes, all of this just for a half-kilo chocolate sculpture. And some of us even represented the Academy at the Jean Pictet competition, which is true, happened to be in Thailand this year. We all secretly wished we could have gone to cheer for them in person, but they didn't need it. Their performance already made us proud back here in Geneva. And then there was the Geneva Marathon, though let's be honest, this entire year was a marathon, full of endurance, moments of doubt, and the occasional existential crisis before the IHL pleadings. We had picnics by the lake, study sessions that turned philosophical after midnight, and side events where the food mysteriously disappeared before the event even begins. A true Geneva Academy case that not even Director Gaeta has managed to solve yet. But among all these memories, our study trip to Armenia stands apart. It was not only remarkable for its breathtaking landscape or the long bus rides, but also because it helped us recall that the law we study is not abstract. It is rooted in the stories of real people, in histories of suffering and resilience. It reminded us that our discipline, whether humanitarian law or human rights, is ultimately about people and about the fragile but vital hope that law can make a difference.
Today, as young professionals, we're facing an increasingly divided international community, and the struggle for consent, even over the most basic questions of human rights and humanitarian law, seems to be in crisis. Wars seem to have returned closer to normality, with 150 armed conflicts raging globally at this moment, according to the ICRC, double the amount of 15 years ago. Democracy and the rule of law, which we depend on, are on the back foot, and their opponents are joining forces. But so can we. And as we learned, it is in moments like this, when a rule is challenged, that it can become even stronger if it's strictly defended and upheld. Our head of education once told me, you have to be the lawyer in the room. No matter where debates lead us, it is important to have experts who know and speak the law in this passionate debate. This quality of understanding opposing views based on well-founded facts is much needed today. And if there's one lesson I'll take from this year, it's also the importance of staying grounded in humility, in collaboration, and in purpose. Change doesn't solely come from grand declarations or perfect theories. It begins with dialogue, empathy, and persistence. As LLM soon-to-be graduates, if need be, we can take any debate to court. And we surely will bring these skills, which we all worked hard for, with us wherever our paths take us next.
Now, as we step into the next chapter, Many of us might feel that quiet pressure to find the perfect job, to put our degree to good use, maybe even to save the world. But perhaps the question isn't how fast we will make an impact, but how truly we will live by what we've learned here. We studied a body of law that is fragile, constantly challenged, sometimes misunderstood, often ignored. But that fragility is exactly what makes it worth defending, because the principles we carry, humanity, dignity, and accountability, are not remnants of the past. They are the foundation of what still holds our societies together. And even in a world that moves too fast, where it sometimes feels like there is no space left for reflection, compassion, or youth, we must hold our ground. We must keep believing in what we do, in what we have studied, in what brought us here in the first place. We may not save the world tomorrow, but we can make sure it doesn't lose its humanity today. And honestly, that's a mission worth dedicating our lives to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice and Yuri, for your inspiring speech. And finally, the representatives from the Master of Advanced Studies in Transitional Justice, Human Rights and the Rule of Law, Flavia Moya Miche and Tije van der Host. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly.
Dear graduates, faculty members, families, and friends. It feels like 4 lifetimes ago that we began our journey as MTJ students on this gray September day at Villa Monnier. The expectations were high and did not disappoint. None of us could have imagined how transformative these months ahead would have been. This transformation went far beyond the classroom and the readings. It was also about the diversity of our perspectives, the sincerity with which we reflected, and the courage of sharing what was sometimes personal and painful.
We represent a group of 42 students, 31 nationalities, and Mr. Excellence, who freely participated in our group chat for a very, very long time, until we realized that he wasn't in fact a student.
But no hard feelings, Mr. Excellence. Your unsolicited advice on our cover letters was still very much appreciated.
Let us now reflect upon the last year. As the weeks went by, the Rothschild building became our second home. We spent so many hours there that at one point we were seriously considering canceling our rents because we were basically living there between those walls.
The first semester was quite intense. In international law, we faced Kahoots that not only tested our knowledge about the course, but also our preferences between cats and dogs, which unfortunately did not count toward the final exam.
In the class of Professor Gary Bien, we unpeeled the onion that is transitional justice, where every concept has its own legal layer and nuances. Of course, we do have to mention the great technology of Unish that made us call with a former TA while being on a Zoom meeting with him because the audio didn't work.
Then came international criminal justice with Professor Shebas. And you're right, Clotilde, although the classes started pretty early in the morning. Listening to his anecdotes for the early commute and November's freezing temperatures, we could have listened to him for the entire year. The classes about displacement also made us understand this important issue in a transitional justice context.
As such, the events that happened every week around the globe made the theory we were learning even more interesting, especially in the second semester when we focused on the different pillars of transitional justice. We also got a taste of the professional experience, but just enough to make us motivated before we become unemployed.
Then came two major projects, the Victim and Human Rights Group work that, against all odds, did not destroy class dynamics, and the final dissertation that became a long, staring contest about us and the computer.
Luckily, this year we also had some time for some academic guided fun, the Kosovo trip. It was very valuable to see the studies in practice by visiting numerous organizations. Additionally, we learned that mojitos are very different in Kosovo.
And very expensive.
And very expensive.
And as those moments slowly turn into memories, we start looking ahead, taking everything we've learned with us into whatever comes next. However, beyond our studies, the world we are in moves at another pace, one where information has become a matter of opinion rather than a statement of facts. A world where immediacy and noise often outweighs thoughtful, inclusive work that takes time and care to build.
We are graduating in a turbulent time, with more conflicts erupting than concluding. The world dynamics are definitely changing, and the view on the respect towards human rights is more than ever challenged. Now more than ever, transitional justice and reconciliations are needed. As fresh graduates, we have to stay true to the values of international law that we have and the ones that we have learned. Not give in to the authoritarian voice that is currently ruling the world. We have been trained to rebuild communities. Let's try to make that happen.
So even if now finding jobs feels never-ending and very, very frustrating, and at times it's also tempting to change professions, let's not lose sight of the reasons why we chose this master, and let these reasons be our strength.
Lastly, on behalf of the class, we want to express our gratitude to the support of families, partners, friends, donors, and coffee machines. Without your support, we would not be sitting in this room. It's now up to us, as fresh graduates, to embrace the absurdity in the world, find a job, and make this place a better world for everyone. We cannot wait to see where everyone is in 5 years' time.
Or maybe in 10. And now, congratulations, MTJ class of 2025.
Wow, thank you so much. Now the moment we are waiting for since 2 hours. But before, again, another speech. Yes, by me this time. I wanted to say a few words after having listened to yours, and they have been very moving and inspiring to me. And I wanted to give a little speech based on a poem that I like very much, and I read to a graduation class many years ago. It's a poem by Robert Frost, which is called The Road Not Taken. So this speech of mine begins with remembering this poem that tells of a traveler who comes to a crossroads, and he chooses the road less traveled by, and that, he says, has made all the difference. And today, of course, while looking at you, I think of that poem. I think of you, the graduates in humanitarian law, human rights, transitional justice, because you, too, have chosen the road less traveled. You could have chosen easier path. You could have chosen the path of comfort, of profit, or of indifference. But you didn't. You chose a path that is demanding and is uncertain. It is the path of those who face suffering, injustice, and human pain, and still decide to do something about it. We live in a world that often feels dark and often feels frightening. Wars are raging, rights are violated, and sometimes it seems that one person or one rule of law cannot change much. But you, our graduates, you are the ones you refuse to give up. When you see war, you think of how to protect civilians. When you see injustice, you think of how to restore dignity. When you see broken society, you think of how to rebuild justice step by step. You remind us that hope is courage, not illusion, that compassion is strength, that law is not only about rules, it is about humanity. And for this, I would like to thank you. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your generosity, for believing that something can be done. The changes you bring may not be revolutionary. They may not make the headlines, but they do matter. Because every act of justice, every word of protection makes our world a little more fair, a little more human. There will be still wars and suffering, but without people like you, we stand for what is right, this world would be a much darker and colder place. So thank you. Thank you for choosing the road less traveled and for reminding us that it is the choice that truly makes all the difference. Congratulations. And now, thank you. And now it is the moment we're waiting for, the moment to deliver the diplomas. So I will call on stage our members of the student office, program by program, and I think I should start with the LLM. No, I start with the executive master, and therefore I call on stage Clotilde Prégorière, as well as Anna Kilibarda.
So, dear graduates, I have the honor and the pleasure to call all your names tonight, whether you are graduating here in the room or online. So, but before starting, I would like to once again congratulate all of you for your fantastic achievement.
Before you come, I forgot that I wanted to share this joy with my dear President Christian Beauvais. Please, can you come to the floor? And Mô Bleeker, please, come in. Let's congratulate our graduates together.
So the moment you've all been waiting for patiently, so the 2025 graduation ceremony, and we start with our Executive Master, Master of Advanced Study in International Law in Armed Conflict. And we will start first with our two 2022-2024 graduating participants. So I would like to call Leila Masaya, who is not here. She was, and graduating, oh, yeah, you're here, sorry. Because they are all here, so I was expecting you to arrive from here. But exactly, you take the road less traveled. Yeah, picture from here, yeah. No, but... And also graduating but online, so Camilo Ruiz Palacio. Sorry. So congratulations to you both. So I will now call on stage our 2023-2025 Executive Master, a graduating participant, so Stephanie Armas Contreras, graduating cum laude. Vanessa Bajada, graduating magna cum laude, but online. So now Omar Vilma Velasquez, graduating magna cum laude. Silvia Bortolato, graduating magna cum laude online. And now call Emanuela Burello, graduating cum laude. Emanuela? She's also online, sorry. Julia Kagi is also graduating online, and so is Ali Dib, graduating magna cum laude. Now Joshua Eckley, graduating magna cum laude. Rana Elias. Maria Elizondo Guajardo, graduating magna cum laude. Nicolas Gérard, graduating magna cum laude. Graduating online, Luis Gomez Negrete, cum laude, and Maria Gonzalez Garcia, graduating summa cum laude. I'll now call into the stage Angela Guillermo Montero, graduating magna cum laude. Eva Calway, graduating cum laude. Stoyan Karashtonayev, graduating cum laude. Ekaterina Kavlis, magna cum laude. Ivana Kozarchenko, magna cum laude. Maria Cello Linares, graduating magna cum laude. Lynn Malouf, cum laude. Graduating online, Emily Mago, magna cum laude, and Metlana Mahmoud. Graduating cum laude, Solène Maillet. David Mooney. Graduating online, Shala Naimi, cum laude. Rubina Paparelli, graduating summa cum laude. Graduating online, Isabella Pino, cum laude. And now call Desislava Ruseva, cum laude. Niels Duque, graduating summa cum laude. Geraldine Skrayen, summa cum laude. Ruben Stewart, magna cum laude. Victoria Vamonde Villarshaw. Mariana Van Zan, magna cum laude. Isabella Wong, magna cum laude. Congratulations to you all. So we're going to take a group picture of this.
Hi. Look at there. Look at there. The picture is there. Be happy. Okay. You go. You're very serious. So now we have the LLM. And for the LLM, we start the LLM with Lotte Vashra.
Yep.
And Clotilde will read the name.
Yes.
Okay, so it's this way.
Yep, it is this way. So now we'll continue with the graduation of our LLM Master of Advanced Study in International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. So first, Sarah Alessi, cum laude. Tanvi Anand, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Hassan Balbaki. And Nadia Berlorer, graduating cum laude. Maya Ben David, cum laude. Yuri Berger, magna cum laude. Jade Birnal Petit. Ruby Brady, cum laude. Jeanne Chaube, magna cum laude. Shi Shen, summa cum laude. Laura Davy, magna cum laude. Luisa de Souza Fernandez, graduating online, magna cum laude. Quentin de Groot, summa cum laude. Maya del Priore, magna cum laude. Alice Di Gennaro, cum laude. Dominique Exler, magna cum laude. Maria Fico, magna cum laude. Natasha Flodgate, magna cum laude. Javad Gaeni, cum laude. Julia Gelo, cum laude. Letizia Heinzmann, graduating magna cum laude online. Tania Iver, magna cum laude. Marina Kelepsi, magna cum laude. Alina Kushniarova, magna cum laude. Madère Leghese, magna cum laude. Ale Mariam Mitiku, cum laude online. Teresa Moos, cum laude. Nicolos Mosidze, cum laude. Lisang Nyati, cum laude. Mira Olmeyer, magna cum laude. Mary Olajide, summa cum laude. Héloïse Pelletier, summa cum laude. Aldo Pérez Vega. Raveline Zardèche, magna cum laude. Dorothea Seifert, graduating online cum laude.
And now call Lene Streidam.
Madeleine Thiel, cum laude. Givenchy Watz, cum laude. Carlos Vázquez Parra. Graduating online, we have Brad Wanken, cum laude, and Muskan Yadav.
So congratulations to you all. We're going to take now the group picture.
You may be also strange faces. And look at Sandra, she's right in front of you. Congratulations to you all, and now we're going to, while you exit the stage, I announce the next graduation. So we're now going to have the final graduation of the evening, the graduation of our 2025 Master of Advanced Studies in International Justice, Human Rights and the Rule of Law. So the diploma will be handed over by Alina. So, oops. So the first graduating student is Ravzi Albar, magna cum laude, but online. So I will now call Anupa Arial, graduating summa cum laude. Anupa? Yeah, Anupa. Aruzan Atebikova, graduating magna cum laude but online. Fatoumata Ba, graduating magna cum laude. Graduating online, Paola Cavazos Oxanas, magna cum laude. Also graduating online, Balkis Shabane, cum laude. I'll now call Emma Craig, summa cum laude. Graduating online, Marina de Levas Alvarez, cum laude. Victoria de Wurst, magna cum laude. Elea Fogg-Tedom, magna cum laude. Mary Mamfai, magna cum laude. Jessica Gray, magna cum laude. Eden Eilu, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Michelle Amam, magna cum laude. And now I'll call Martin Katzliu, magna cum laude. Roxane Kedoud, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Maria Lazaro Gonzalez, magna cum laude. Maela Lermimio, magna cum laude, sorry. Virginia Marciucci, magna cum laude. Gita Mahapatra, magna cum laude. Memouna Manet, magna cum laude. Jesus Maya Pedraza, cum laude. Jan Mixtik, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Faith Kuluki, magna cum laude. Flavia Moya Miche, magna cum laude. Aditya Mukherjee, cum laude. Graduating online, Nejra Mulao Merovic, summa cum laude. Leticia Novage Barbarossa da Fonseca, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Laura Potzel, magna cum laude. Lily Radwan, magna cum laude. Shukriya Raimi, cum laude. Omera Rustai, magna cum laude. Abdul Sakab, magna cum laude. Sarah Samra, cum laude. Graduating online, Katerina Shishova, summa cum laude. Aria Shrivastava, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Luisa Stradiotto, magna cum laude. Also graduating online, Natamon Supportvate, cum laude. Noah Tomsik, magna cum laude. Graduating online, Leslie Torres, cum laude. And our final graduate of the night, Thijs van der Oost, cum laude. So it is now time for the group picture of the 2025 Master of Advanced Study in TJ graduates.
Done. Very good. I close when they take the picture, or you have to say something?
No, I just wanted to say congrats again.
Congrats together, yeah. To refreshment, and I thank everyone. And with this fantastic, oh, the last one, absolutely. Keep us over. Okay, with this, I would like to conclude this beautiful graduation ceremony. Congratulations to all our graduates. You can take your seats. And before inviting you to the refreshment, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you, all the team of the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights, which has made this night possible. Therefore, Lotte, Alina, Anna, team, and Greg and Roman and everyone else, and important Christelle, and of course Clotilde, our fantastic head of education, to whom I would like to dedicate a great applause. And thank you to the Mrs. Mô Bleeker, the President Christian Beauvais, and the Fondation du Prix Henri Dunant pour être ici avec nous ce soir. Et maintenant, c'est le moment d'aller fêter. Clotilde, tu veux dire quelques mots?
I just wanted to congratulate all of you once again, invite you all to the cocktail, which will be up the stairs. There is an area for all of you.
Don't get lost.
Yeah.